So, a really interesting morning for all of us across all of the sessions. And what I hear from the sessions in the other rooms is just as engaging as we had here. But every year I look for a theme, something that's sort of coming out of what we're hearing, that's going to be what we've learned at this session. And the big thing I saw in one of our presentations earlier was about the emergence of technologists and the engineering side of media, and how the common marker for success in so many media organizations is the extent to which they've integrated technology with that news gathering and content generation piece so that they're working as a seamless whole. And our next speaker is in a really good position to talk to us about how you do that, even with a brand that has its roots deep in what you might have called legacy print a couple of years ago. How do you bring that technology piece to the fore, and how do you use it and integrate it to give the kind of results that we're seeing from so many media companies that are transforming themselves today? So please welcome our first speaker for this afternoon's session, the Chief Technology Officer at Time Inc., Colin Bodell. Colin.
I love this photograph. I have much more gray hair now than I had in that original photograph. Time has been around for nearly 100 years. And when you talk about what you may have called legacy print, we very definitely do call legacy print. And one of the reasons I came to Time, so I did 8 years at Amazon, and I moved to Time in 2014. And people ask me, why do you come from a high-tech company to I wouldn't say pejoratively a low-tech company, but an organization that technology has not been its dominant force, because the channel for distribution of the content that Time and all of its various brands have put out over the years has been through one channel. It's been print. But yet the value in the organization and what attracted me to Time was to take that great content, both text and pictures, which have been around for nearly 100 years, but to add to it audio, video, virtual reality. If you saw the recent Sports Illustrated swimsuit app, we did that as a VR experiment. But the feedback we got from that really said that VR is on its way. I spent time at the Game Developer Conference in San Francisco last week, and that whole thing was dominated by VR goggles. Now the challenge is those VR goggles are very bulky. But as VR gets more penetrated into the market, then I know that the cost of those devices are going to come down. I mean, they're sub $100 right now for the goggles. Of course, you can get Google Cardboard, and it becomes significantly cheaper, cheap enough to give it away. But the technology is going to get better. The cost is going to keep on coming down, so it won't be as such a great interference for you to be able to, and our readers, our customers, to be able to appreciate that content. So VR is a big portion of our future. So the thing that attracted me to Time was to be able to take this amazing content, this legacy, this history, this powerful history of storytelling, and yet to take that content and spread it through all of these different distribution channels. I also think, and the major premise of what I want to talk about now, I'll tell you now, because then if you need to leave, you know the message I wanted to deliver is that the large media companies, I think, have got both an obligation and a responsibility to help smaller and medium-sized companies or emerging media companies with technology. The cost of establishing a content management system, a distributed application management system, video streaming, I mean, it's a very expensive, time-consuming, and complex problem. And if you're a small and medium-sized company, then you really want to invest your money in the storytelling, in content, of reaching your customers, understanding that demographic. You really don't want to be spending your money on technology. And yet technology is a key portion of how you deliver those stories. And I think the bigger companies have got an obligation, a responsibility to help out those smaller companies, not just because we're nice people, although we are nice people. But it's not just because we're nice people, because if we can help out smaller and medium-sized companies, then there's content from them that we can syndicate, that we can leverage, and we also help them with platforms and technology that allows us to syndicate our content into markets that they otherwise would not be able to reach. And that's just one facet of our business. So what I wanted to take you through is how I look at technology relative to the content space. And I entitled this presentation, Scratching Your Own Itch, and then Scratch Others. And the reason why is, the way we look at it is, we take the approach of identifying problems, challenges, opportunities that we are facing ourselves, and we solve them in the best way that we possibly can. And we make life easy for our own staff, our own editorial staff, our own journalists, our own photo editors, photographers, videographers, to get out, capture this content, format it, structure it, and then deliver it very effectively. But if we do that, we can find others that have a similar set of problems and allow them to use the same technology that we'll be using. And we've done that in a number of cases, and I'll talk about some of those in a few minutes' time. So, as I said, Time has been in business for about 100 years. We spun off from Time Warner just a little under 2 years ago. And that gave us some great opportunities to fly as our own company. And we also weren't beholden to Time Warner to make decisions for us. You know, when we knew we wanted to get more into the video space, when you're dealing with a company like Time Warner that owns Warner Brothers and HBO and Turner Broadcasting, they wanted to keep all of the video for themselves. If I was in their position, I'd want to do the same thing. As an independent company, now traded on the New York Stock Exchange, we're getting very deeply into video because that's what our customers are telling us they want to be able to access. That's where they want to be able to get their stories. Yes, they still want to read. Yes, they still want the very in-depth analysis that we offer in publications like Time, like Fortune, certainly for sports fans in Sports Illustrated and the like. But video is a really important mechanism for us to effectively tell our stories. So we have 80-plus brands worldwide, predominantly in North America and in the UK, but we also syndicate our content right the way around the globe with a large set of partners. And you know, the challenge that we're facing, like so many people, is our print revenue is in decline, but our digital revenue is in its ascendancy. And the key thing for us is making sure that we cross the revenue point as early as we possibly can. You know, we still license and you know, sell a lot of subscriptions to our print magazines, but that's reducing, and we want to be able to capture those customers wherever they are, whether they are sitting behind a web browser, whether they're working on a mobile application, whether they're sitting in their living rooms with a Roku or an Xbox or a PlayStation. For me, it doesn't matter. When people wake up in the morning or when they get home from work in the evening, wherever they want to engage or indulge in their passion, we should make those content available to them as easily as we possibly can. So I want to tell you sort of two stories to typify the way that I've been looking at things within technology and time in the last couple of years. And this is just a couple of slices, but the idea is to give you a sense about how we're approaching things. First of all, when I walked into Time, I found that we had 5 global data centers that we owned and operated ourselves. In fact, one of them was on the 21st floor of the Time and Life building in New York City. And Time and Life building is on 6th Avenue, right opposite the Radio City Music Hall. It's some of the most expensive property, so expensive real estate on the planet. And we were using a whole floor as a data center, which to me was just insane. You know, we should be either not using that space or using it for staff that need to interact with people in New York City. Having a data center there was crazy. So when I came in, and I came in hot off moving I used to run all of the Amazon websites. I'd moved all the Amazon websites into a cloud environment, Amazon AWS. And it was a very easy decision for me to say straight away, let's get out of our own data centers, let's get rid of all of that held capital. But not only saving cost, By moving to a cloud infrastructure, it gives us the opportunity to turn on new hardware when we launch a new brand or when we get spikes in our traffic without having to spend months procuring hardware, configuring it, installing it, racking it. Sometimes our time to incremental traffic could be in the order of 4 months. And I wanted to drive that down to closer to 4 minutes. So you can only do that by a radical change in terms of how you handle infrastructure. So we made this assertion, we should not be in the data center business. We should only do the things that are needle movers for our business, the things that nobody else can do. We want to guard our time jealously and apply that to building technology that isn't available in the outside market. And anything else that we can possibly use that is either commodity and or open source, then bring that in and use it. And we had a lot of legacy systems that were homegrown internally that now third-party systems have come along and do a better, cheaper job for us. So the first stage was getting us out of our data centers and being able to leverage the power of the cloud. So we moved all of our websites and we moved all of our back office corporate systems onto Amazon AWS. We started that project mid-2014. By the end of 2015, we've got 100% of our UK sites in the cloud, 76%, very exact number, of our US sites in the cloud, and we'll finish off the balance by the end of this year. We built our own virtual data center on top of Amazon AWS. Our hosting costs dropped by about 50%. I was able to take about $6 million out of the business or out of our cost basis on an annual recurring basis. And that money I could either give back to the corporation, our CFO would be very pleased about that, or I could take that money and invest it in better and improved ways of telling our story to our customers, because that's where our business stops and finishes every day. And now, as I say on here, time to traffic is about 15 minutes. I put these slides together a few weeks ago. Our time to traffic now is about 4 minutes. So as we get spikes, as world events occur, our websites get hit harder. Historically, when we hit the limits of our technology, we'd have to throttle. Now we can just automatically, we don't even need to have human involvement, we can just take those spikes by provisioning automatically new hardware at Amazon data centers and let them take the cost. They pay for that machine, those machines sitting around doing nothing. We only pay for the time that we use them. So it's been very powerful. The other benefit we got from moving to the cloud is the ability to innovate and iterate very rapidly. Because we can now spin up systems very rapidly and also take them down, we can experiment. We can try out things that historically would have been far too expensive to play around with. Now we can do it in a very effective, very rapid manner. We also take advantage of all of the services that Amazon has to offer. These are fundamental core building blocks that we don't need to build ourselves. We also don't need to go to third parties to build. We just take advantage of them. We have to pay for them, but we pay for them as we use them. So our cost management, our cost containment has come down significantly. And as you'll hear a little bit later on, we're now taking a bunch of this infrastructure, this expertise, and working with our partners to have enable them to take advantage of it as well, where they don't have that deep technological experience. I have 1,000 engineers working for me around the world. There's very few media companies that have that depth of engineering bench, and I could take advantage of it to help our partners out as they take and distribute our content, or as we syndicate in content from them. So another significant challenge we have when I came on board is, although our websites are built with a responsive design, whether you're on an iPhone, an iPad, or on a website, the sites will scale and reorder themselves based on the form factor of the devices we're running on. But there was a number of reasons why we had to build some native sites to get access to really the core power of mobile devices, to tie into other applications, to access camera, to do in-app billing, things like that. And it was costing us somewhere in the region of $200,000 to $250,000 to build a native app, which is ridiculously expensive. What was happening is each of our brands were going out and doing these separately. So you figure across 80 brands, some of them very wealthy brands, some of them marginal, make only a few $1 million each year. They're all profitable, but they just didn't have the money to invest in these native applications. And given the thesis is all of our content everywhere instantaneously. Whenever we publish on a website or publish in the magazine, we want that content to be available across all channels. We had an imperative, we had an itch that we needed to scratch to bring down the cost of how we built these applications. And we wanted to build them specifically for iOS, for Apple, and also for Android. But we also wanted to build them for Xbox and PlayStation and Roku, plenty of other set-top boxes, because again, video is getting so terribly important for us. We've got these great brands, let's find other ways to appropriately tell those stories, and video is just massively growing for us. So driving down the cost, incredibly important, and making it easy for engineering staff and also non-engineering staff to design, to configure, and to deploy these applications very, very rapidly. We don't know when news is going to break, so we want to take advantage of those sort of historic events and roll out applications that tell that story when in the past the cost to do so would just be absolutely prohibitive. So what we did is we built our own platform. We looked at third-party applications, and they were either very expensive or one size fits all. They weren't specific for the needs of the media industry. They were just general case applications, and they would take far too much time to configure, too much overhead to work with, and we would miss the window of opportunity to be able to tell our story effectively. So Toro is a homegrown application. We used a bunch of open source for it. We built a bunch of components internally. But now we can generate a new site in about a week. And in fact, for many of our leading brands, we just push out a new version of the site that people can update as they feel necessary, and push it out on a regular basis, sometimes even a daily basis. The content streams separately, but the application we're always updating. And the nice thing about having a common platform is when we add a new feature specifically for a Fortune magazine or a Sports Illustrated or a People or an InStyle, then everybody else within the family, as well as our third parties, is able to take advantage of that. So really, on a per-site basis, the cost is driven to the floor. It's such that they don't have to even work it into their budget. They know that I'll pay, the sort of the rounding error cost necessary to build these applications and roll them out. Because you can't anticipate necessarily where your customers are going to want to access the content. So in that case, make it available for them everywhere and do it at a tremendously low cost. So we had a great example of this when Apple rolled out the watch. It had taken us about a week to put the Time Inc., the Time Magazine mobile application out. If you search for it on Time Mobile, you can download that app. It's got the leading stories. It's got stories across each of the individual categories of the site or of the brand, videos. We have an audio component to it that people can sit in their car and listen to, perhaps as they're driving to work. When the Apple Watch came out, we did a bunch of work using the Apple Watch emulator. And then a couple of days before it was due to launch, we actually got one of the Apple Watches. We found out that this wonderful emulator didn't really emulate very well, and there were a bunch of problems. So within a weekend, we effectively rewrote the application based on the Toro platform. And at the time of the Apple Watch launch, then we were alongside Apple on stage with their logos, announcing and being able to deliver at the same time. With the old way of doing things, we would have completely missed that opportunity. Now, whether the watch from Apple goes on to be successful or unsuccessful, I don't really mind. The cost for producing it, or for producing our content on it, again, was just a rounding error. So that rapid iterative development is incredibly powerful to allow the creative journalists and editorial staff to play, to experiment, to do things that otherwise would have been prohibitively expensive and complicated to do for them. So now we can turn things on very rapidly. In fact, I wanted to show you, we jointly announced with ASN, so this is a sports network based out of Hong Kong, a partnership relationship. And what happened there is we went to them. They have got sites, they've got broadcast and over-the-top streaming video sites, channels. And they wanted to license the content from Sports Illustrated. In fact, they've announced that they're rebranding ASN 1 and ASN 2 as Sports Illustrated and Sports Illustrated 2 to serve up predominantly American sports to an Asian marketplace, which there's a huge interest for. And when we went across to visit them, they said, they only had a certain amount of money they could use to do the licensing. And we got into a discussion about how they were going to run their websites, how they were going to run their mobile applications. And they were going to use a third party to build out those bits of technology. And when they told us how much that was going to cost them, we were just aghast. It was, money that they should be keeping within their business to work on content, to work on targeting for their customers, providing, great customer service. So we said, look, we've got technology for building websites. We've got technology for building mobile applications. And they weren't quite sure about that, how something that would be relatively inexpensive would have the value necessary for them to be a big player in their market. So what we did is we put a couple of guys on a plane, sent them out to Hong Kong. They were there for 3 days. And they stood up their content management system, their website. They branded it, Sports Illustrated, appropriate for that market. They also delivered a mobile application based on stuff that we'd done for Time and Sports Illustrated in the past. So we had a little bit of a head start on that, but nevertheless, we configured it for that market and did it just in 2 or 3 days. And that gave them enough confidence that working with us would be an appropriate and good thing to do. And the way that we work with them is now once a quarter, they can come and look at the portfolio, not just of content, but they can look at the portfolio of technology that we have and see if there are things that would benefit their lines of business in that marketplace, or in, they're held by an investment bank and venture capitalists. If there are other markets they'd like to enter with other elements of our brands, they know they can do so much more inexpensively. And by the way, we run the infrastructure for them. We run it on AWS. We take care of all the technology. They really just laser focus on the needs of their customers within that market. So we're pursuing this. I talked about data centers, I talked about mobile applications, but we're taking the same philosophy and applying it through lots of other ways. Big data, how we gather that together. Again, small and medium-sized companies don't have the tools that we have to be able to interrogate those data and really focus their targeting, their marketing, their ad serving appropriately. We can help them out with that. We help them out with information security. We help them out with digital asset management, rights management across all asset types. Video, again, is a huge thing for us. And also ad blocking. Based on territories around the world, ad blocking is more or less impactful. And we're helping them both handle ad blocking technology, but also realizing the fact that ultimately ads need to be served out of the CMS, so they are indistinguishable from content and therefore can't be blocked. You're either blocking an entire site or you're not. And we're coming up with some innovative technology around that even third-party independent companies in the ad blocking space can't do because they're one-size-fits-all. Our speciality is for the media industry, what can we possibly do? So for us, solving our own problems is absolutely number one priority to grow our business, to extend our reach to our customers around the world. But if we can do that and help our partners out at the same time, then I think that's incredibly valuable for the business overall. All right, thank you very much.
Will you take a question if we...
Absolutely.
Okay, questions from the floor, if we have any, and a quick one from me, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Actually, it's quite a deep one, I suppose, and fairly personal. So you came from what's fundamentally, obviously, a tech company, an online retail company at heart, and you arrive in a legacy media company. We've agreed that was a fair term. How were you welcomed? Did they regard you as, great, finally, we've got an engineer, we've got a tech guy who knows how this stuff works, and he's going to help us to go in the direction we want? Or was there a sense of, really? Do we really have to get this engaged with the nuts and the bolts and the wires and is that really what we do?
Yeah.
How did that work?
I think, because there was so much going on at the time, the spin out from Time Warner, effectively a new leadership, a new management team in Time, the expectation was high that whoever we were bringing in, we're going to make changes to the business. That the industry is challenged because of the decline in print revenue. We've got to come up with new ways of working and also change the cadence, the speed. When you're putting out a monthly book, you run at one particular speed and cadence. When you're putting out websites and mobile applications, you're flying along very, very fast. So I had a comment after about 6 months of me being on board. One of my staff said to me, wow, we've been running at this tremendously high pace. When's it going to slow down? And I said, no, you don't understand. This is the new normal. This is how it's going to be, because we're competing against the Apples, the Facebooks, the Googles, other people you wouldn't consider traditional media companies, we're competing against them. They run at that speed. If we run slower, then they're going to win. We have to run at least the same speed. We have to use the same technology. We have to use the same approaches. That's table stakes. That's what you put money on the table just to buy in. Then we have to go further. But the good thing is we can do that because we understand the media business. And the team I put together is now sort of half quote-unquote legacy media. I mean, these are all very talented individuals, but they know the depth of media. And then I put in some technologists that come out of Amazon, that come out of Facebook, that come out of Google, that understand the breadth of what technology has to offer. So, the engineering team went through a big cultural change in the first 12 months. The rest of the business is going through a big cultural change. I mean, it's hard to change the direction of the ship that's been steering one way for 100 years, but gradually, bit by bit, we're moving it. And what's happening is the brands that are embracing the technology and embracing the speed, you can see it from the revenue numbers coming up. The revenue doesn't lie, the profit margin doesn't lie. And their colleagues across other parts of the business, where perhaps they're not seeing that degree of improvement, they then go to them and say, how are you doing it? They don't have to come to me, because, what do I know about the media business? I've been in high tech my entire life. But they'll go to their colleagues and say, how are you doing it? And then I see them adopting the same both technology but also technological approach in terms of speed, doing 2 weekly sprints, doing stand-ups, working closely with brand engineering teams. So a lot of change. It's not been for everybody. Some people have chosen to leave the organization, but at the same time, it's attracted people into the company that want to move at that pace. That maybe they've come out of new media, maybe they've come out of other industries, they want to pull it all together. So we've lost a few people, we've gained a bunch of people, and the culture is changing. So it's been more of a cultural change than a technological change, I would say.
Great. Can I ask you then, please, to thank Colin Bodell. Thank you, Colin.
Okay, thank you.